Hello, and welcome to Creating Connections, Destiny Arts Center's panel series where we build community through real talk. Hi, Calvin. Thank you for joining us. Calvin, I'm going to ask you to turn your camera off for just 1 second, and we are going to get started momentarily with the discussion. My name is Shanna Bowie, and I am the on-site manager at Destiny Arts Center. Tonight, we're going to discuss Destiny Arts Center's strategic plan and how we're moving forward in the wake of everything that's going on in our world. Our organization spent the summer going through a strategic plan process, which involves setting our priorities for the next 3 years. And it's really important that we decided to do this at this time because our world is going through something very difficult. And we wanted to make sure that moving forward, we're not only continuing our mission of creating young people who are peaceful, powerful, and creative, but also as an organization, interrogating our own systems and how we work as teaching artists, as members of a larger community in Oakland. And we are doing that by setting our goals, setting our priorities, and putting our money and our resources where our mouth is. And I would also be remiss if I did not mention what is going on in our world today. Today we got some very difficult news about the murder of Breonna Taylor and the continued injustice that is happening in our country surrounding the lives of Black people. And I think personally, as a Black woman, this work is important to me because we hope as an organization and as individuals to shape where our world is going, to help our young people shape where our world is going. And so we want to talk a little bit to some of our community experts tonight about what our priorities are moving forward. We want to get their feedback, and we also want to hear from you. So this is streaming live on Facebook. If you have any questions about our strategic plan, about our priorities, and if you have any feedback about what you think we should be doing in the community, this is the time to ask them. We will continue to have these discussions to talk about what we're doing as an organization, and we really look to you, our community, to let us know what we could be doing better. Before we get started, we're gonna do things the way we always do at Destiny. We're gonna start with a little meditation and mindfulness. So everybody in the Zoom room with me, as well as everybody on Facebook Live, if you can just take a second and breathe. Especially for my folks who are viewing this from Oakland, from California, breathing has been very important for us lately. It's been something that we've been struggling to do. And I really want us to just take some time and take some breath. Breathe at your own pace. And when you're feeling centered, if you can lower or close your eyes. And I want you to take a moment and think not of where we are right now, but think of the world that we would like to see in the future. What does that world look like for you? What does that world feel like? What does it sound like? And take a deep breath with me. On the count of 3, we're gonna inhale. 1, 2, 3, inhale. And exhale. One more time, inhale. And exhale. And one last time, breathe together. Inhale. And exhale. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for taking the time to breathe with us. All right, I am going to bring up our first guest, our amazing executive director, Archie, who is going to talk a little bit about Destiny Arts Center's strategic plan and our priorities and how we move forward.
Thanks, Shanna. It's nice to see everybody. I'm going to share my screen and just talk a little bit about the process that we went through this summer. Again, my name is Archie. I'm the executive director at Destiny Arts Center, and I've been here at the organization for about 5.5 years, and I apologize in advance for children and animals running around right now. So I'm going to share my screen and just talk you through a little bit about what we ended up doing this summer. So our strategic plan was actually supposed to be ending at the end of this current fiscal year, and given COVID and the transition of our co-founders and just everything that was happening in the world, we really felt like this was the appropriate time for us to engage in the strategic planning process with our board. So we spent about 6 to 8 weeks hiring a consultant and working with all of our staff and our board to really go deep into kind of what does the next 3 years look like for Destiny. And so, again, we had the transition of all of our co-founders happening. COVID-19 was happening. Systemic racism is continuing to happen and just was becoming a lot more visible throughout our country this summer, and our strategic plan was ending. And so this really just felt like the perfect time. Our mission is to inspire and ignite social change through the arts. And we envision a world where young people grow up to live meaningful, connected, and secure lives in an inclusive environment. So what we decided about our strategic priorities this summer are we wanted to focus on access and making sure that all young people have access and their families have access to high quality movement-based arts program despite any potential barriers. We wanted to focus on high quality creative youth development programming and making sure that our programs were really, through our programs, young people were developing the highest level of skill that would then enable them to ignite change within their community. We looked at social justice moves, which is really our way of verbalizing our commitment to being a learning and anti-racist organization through equity, transparency, feedback, and accountability. And then looked at sustainability in terms of diversifying our funding sources, just being mindful of what is happening in our economy for the next few years, and wanting to ensure that Destiny is around for another 32 years at least. So in terms of, we focused on 4 major areas. Stakeholder is really our community. So the goal is to provide pathways for all young people to become peaceful, powerful, and creative leaders. People in learning is looking at our artists and our curriculum and utilizing artistic excellence as a vehicle for social change. Operational processes, which are primarily internal around enhancing clarity and operational efficiency, and then financial, which is, I say that last because it is important, but that is the reason we have financial, is that the other priorities are really the ones that Destiny is focused on, and financial allows that to happen. So through financial, focusing on diversification of income and long-term stability and sustainability of the organization. So I'll just go through the goals. This presentation looks at the year 1 goals, but just a stakeholder. The first goal was really building out a flexible and community-based COVID response that continues to engage youth and support our artists. We're very mindful of one of the many important roles that Destiny serves in the community is by supporting our community and being a place where our community can really connect with one another. And obviously that is increasingly difficult during COVID. So trying to figure out alternative ways for us to do that. So some of the things that we decided to do was launching virtual circles, where before all of our virtual classes are happening, Mr. B is going to be holding for half an hour each day a time where young people, family members can come in and just connect with one another and with him. So trying to provide a space where families can still connect with each other, even though it's virtual. We are also looking at combining art forms. And so one example of what we're doing this fall is combining youth songwriting and hip hop. So that just finding new ways of engaging both our artists and our young people. Second goal was really about increasing the youth leadership opportunities and really looking at authentic youth leadership. I'm so excited to have Noemi on this panel with us, because one of the things we talked about was, because of her work that she did with us this summer, is creating an anti-racism youth task force and really empowering young people to think about Destiny has always been focused on anti-racism work, and yet we can go deeper, and we want to be open to going deeper, both as a staff and a board and as an entire community. And so how do we empower young people to really to teach us more about what we should be doing and to hold us all accountable? So that program is starting this year. And then the third focus is really looking at expanding our school programming outside of Oakland. Destiny has been in Oakland for 32 years, and yet as we follow where families are being pushed to as a result of gentrification, not all of them live in Oakland anymore. And so we are committed to serving our families in Oakland, but also looking at where they're moving to and expanding our programs outside of the Oakland community, ideally in partnership with other organizations who are already doing amazing work there. In terms of our people and learning goals, which is really about our teaching artists and kind of how we do what we do. So the first goal is really looking, in terms of COVID, creating a staff action plan about what happens if people get sick, who can back up that teaching artist or that staff person. We are focusing on creating a teaching artist, a Destiny teaching blueprint, which is really looking at how do we capture that special sauce of Destiny. And this is particularly important with the transition of the co-founders leaving after all of this time, that we want to make sure that that magic of Destiny stays within the organization. And so a lot of that is by facilitating conversations between co-founders and teaching artists and making sure we have that captured so that we can continue to train Destiny teaching artists and run our programs in the way that we always have. And then the last goal for teaching and learning is to formalize an emerging artist program, which is really looking at how do we bring in 18 to 24-year-olds and how do we teach them or teach teaching artists how to be teaching artists at Destiny. So it is hard sometimes for people to come in and learn what we do, and we realize we have all these amazing teaching artists who have grown up through the organization, who are interested in being apprentices with us and then kind of developing their practice with us. And so creating a robust program to support them in doing that. Our next category is operational goals, which are really looking internally at communication on COVID practices throughout the organization and creating a learning organization at all levels, which is really around, we had talked about social justice moves as one of the things that we're focusing on. So it's around making sure that staff at all levels feel comfortable providing feedback, and that there are opportunities for feedback and evaluation, and that we are doing anti-racism work not just externally through PDs, but that we're actually doing that work internally with our staff and with our board, so that we are continuing to hold ourselves accountable and continuing to push ourselves. Another category is clarifying expectations and values at Destiny. And so just making sure that we have clear materials for teaching artists, for staff, for board members who come on board, so that we're very clear about this is what the organization is. And then the last one is around creating digital marketing collateral that we have been lacking for a long time, and was sort of through amazing people like Sophie and Beatrice and a lot of our staff, we have pulled things together, but we want to be able to actually just have clear materials, which becomes increasingly important when we are virtual. And then the last category is around financials. So we're looking at sustainability for the organization over the next, for this strategic plan over the next 3 years. So looking at new earned income opportunities, looking at our reserves and being clear so that we can be clear with our staff around when we tap into our reserves, and if we need to, at what point, if we hopefully don't need to get there, but if we do need to get there, what are our policies around that? We want to look at securing foundation and our government funding from new sources. So Destiny has really been working in the fields of creative youth development and arts education for a long time, and have increasingly been doing more work with mental health and now with workforce development. So how do we tap into additional funding sources? We want to look at deepening our individual donor support and also increasing corporate support as well, just as both as new ways of ensuring financial sustainability for the organization. And I will stop sharing my screen. And I think that is it for now in terms of our strategic plan. Happy to answer any other questions kind of as we go through this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Archie. And I'm actually going to ask our other panelists to turn their screens on right now, and we will get into discussion about the strategic plan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So what I'm going to have everyone do is just go around and introduce yourself, your name, what organization or place that you represent, and kind of what brings you to this work. So that work can be arts and education, that work can be anti-racism. Like, where are you coming from in this work of building community in Oakland? And I am going to start with Calvin and the baby in the background.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Good to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for inviting me. Been a supporter of Destiny Arts Center, the work you do in community and how you do the work. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this. My name is Calvin, out here in East Oakland with my young one, Malik. Say what's up, Malik. There. And how I'm connected to this work in this community. I'm part of a network called the Brotherhood of Elders Network, which is a gathering of Black men in Oakland that goes about 4 generations, from the Babas to the young ones who are coming up, and identifying ways in which we could create a community that supports their health, their development, their relationships, and access to resources, but really emphasizing that through leadership and community through relationship, and building those relationships across generations. And so with that, also taking work around community development through art, through culture. I'm a cultural strategist with Movement Strategy Center. And so I'll pause it there because I want to hear more from the other folks on the call, but that's how I'm coming up in this conversation. And also, yes, I got it. Most importantly, as a parent of a young person in Oakland who these conversations are front and center in a different way for me these days. Malik is my first, and these are questions that come up for me often. How will we create a community where he will experience, raise up, connect up here in Oakland? So yeah, that's me.
Right, thank you. I'm gonna move on to Nina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nina Woodruff-Wilson. I'm the executive director for the Museum of Children's Art. Some of you know us as MOCHA. We've been around for about 30 years, and we work in the space of arts, education, and equity. I am from Oakland, specifically East Oakland, very proud to be a part of the community. And I was raised as a MOCHA kid, so MOCHA is very near and dear to my soul. It definitely kept me off the streets and away from, the trouble that young people can get into. So I come into this conversation with with sort of a focus on arts and education and access for children that look like me, as well as my own three. So a mom and a wife first, and then the other things follow. So that's how I enter. And of course, as a Black woman, I enter the conversation with all of that with me. Thank you.
And I'm gonna throw it to Noemi. Who is having some trouble unmuting. So I'm gonna throw it to Indi and then come back to Noemi.
Yeah, Noemi. I saw the dog, your dog's barking. So I'm happy to be a non-barking dog for a second. Hi everybody, Indi McCasey. I'm the executive director of the Arts Education Alliance of the Bay Area. Also former Destiny Arts Center employee. So this feels like a really incredible, opportunity to just come back and get to see Destiny's continued growth and trajectory. In my role at the Arts Education Alliance of the Bay Area, I work with others like Shanna, as well as Nina, who are both on the board, to really convene arts educators, artists, cultural creatives across the Bay Area around how we can work together to, for the purpose of racial justice, for the purpose of creating the communities we want to see. And I just feel really excited about this process that you all are undertaking to really seek community input. Because I feel like that really just models for a lot of people, both through youth leadership as well as ongoing community participation, the ways that we can really co-create the kinds of organizations that are gonna create the Oakland and spaces that we wanna see. I'm from the South Bay, Sunnyvale, so not East Bay, but excited to continue to be part of this collective Bay Area community. Thanks so much, y'all.
Noemi.
Hello, I'm Noemi. Sorry, my dog was barking. She started barking as soon as you said my name, so I couldn't unmute. I was working as the Destiny Youth intern over the summer, and I was lucky enough to be a part of the strategic planning process. And I guess what personally brings me to the table is I myself am an artist, and I feel that art is a really integral tool for radicalizing the different institutions in our world. And I'm passionate about bringing it to youth and about bringing it to the community. And I also did a lot of anti-racism research at Destiny, so I'm excited to bring that to the table.
So Archie talked about some initiatives that we have. One big one is the anti-racism task force that we will be starting. So just to give a little bit more background on that, that is a paid position for young people. The idea is to take them through a process from this fall through to next spring to interrogate Destiny's systems, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, and then for them to make recommendations to our board and staff about how we can implement their recommendations and prioritize them, budget them, all of those things moving forward. And that will be headed by me. I'm in the process of gathering materials. We also have an application process for that. We've been inviting young people to apply. Applications are due on October 1st. And yeah, that really came out of Noemi's research this summer. We asked Noemi to look at other organizations and how they were either explicit about their anti-racism practices or not, and kind of recommend to us how we can push ourselves to be more transparent to the community about what that means for our organization. And she really suggested that, have the young people figure out what those steps look like. And then the other thing that Archie talked about that I think is really important is talking about how gentrification has pushed our communities outside of Oakland? And how do we make sure that we're still engaging the people who need what we can provide and are a part of our Oakland community, even if they no longer live here? So just, I want to throw out to the panel, what are your thoughts about what you've heard so far about our priorities, and maybe what do you think implementation or first steps might look like to engage in these processes? And anyone can start. And then do the teacher thing where I'm going to call on you if nobody wants to go first.
Those were a lot of questions. Yeah, so I'll start with the part about bringing students and or youth into the discussion around anti-racism. I'm a firm believer that they are sort of closer to what liberation truly looks like. And if we are not engaging the youth, meaning that they are producers, right? So if they're not producers of these conversations, and if they're not producers of what it looks like, then we are failing the next generation who not necessarily will be equipped, but that won't sort of have, real life training in the area, right? And so I think it's important that not just sort of allowing them to enter or engage on the conversation, meaning not just to evaluate, but also it's important that they produce, right? Meaning like, I want to make sure, it's important to me that they're designers, right? So what part of designing are they included in that, not just evaluation, right? Are they designing the questions? And I say that not lightly, I say that with a lot of integrity. It's important because we are, as teaching artists, right, we are teaching them. And how do we know if we're doing it right unless we're asking them to form the questions? So those are some of the things that I'm not sure if you sort of have dabbled with or have thought about, but that's something that kind of comes up strongly for me. So many people think that they're speaking for the youth, and they're speaking out of a very detached perspective. And so I think it's important that if that's not built in, that we make sure, and I say we, I mean arts ed, make sure that if we truly want to have liberation, that our youth are designing the questions, and that it's coming from them specifically, and they're in the design piece of the evaluation, because evaluation is very actually, I don't care who's on the call, it's very white centric, right? And so I want to make sure that if we're talking about equity and liberation, and if we're talking about, BIPOC children, Black, Indigenous, people of color children and youth, shouldn't they be the ones determining what that looks like, since we are supposedly teaching them? So I'm going to stop there and let some others join in, because you asked us like 10 questions. I'm like, oh, my brain hurts. So I'll give that to you and I'll stop there.
What I will say is, I'm just stealing from Noemi. When she presented to us, she said the first thing that we should do is have the task force define what anti-racism is. And they will be the ones to define that. So in terms of what I see my role is my role is to gather the materials, to have a baseline for us to start from, and for them then to, start to create the definitions that we're working from.
Nina, I appreciate what you're saying about evaluation, because I think you're absolutely right. And and from the perspective of an ED, like we're trying to get funding and everyone's like, what's your evaluation? And show me what the outcomes are. And you're right. It's very, white centric, Ivy League kind of this is what you have to tell people that they have to accomplish. And so I appreciate you saying that. One of the things that is in the strategic plan, but we ended up pushing it off, because like truly doing evaluation is huge. And we've done it in little pieces, but developing a rubric around what young people are actually getting through the programs. And we've pushed that off to the second or third year because in order to do it well, we need more time to do it. But I am so glad you said what you did, because I think that we want to make sure that that's a really critical piece of how we do that when we actually engage in that work.
And I decided to throw out another question, but I think, you know, it's really important that we, you know, how are we authentically supporting young people in their activism and engagement? How are we not just standing, you know, how are we not just like pushing them forward to be the face? How are we standing beside them and sometimes standing behind them? So I think this is a really critical time where organizations are wanting to do that. And I don't know if y'all are experienced. I do know, because I follow what's going on. I do know that, Nina, you've been doing a lot of work at MOCHA with young people and having them lead discussions around racism and how do we center Black people. So, you know, what has been your experience with letting young people authentically lead and supporting their leadership?
Okay, so I guess Indi and Calvin just gonna string me out. Okay.
That seemed like a direct question to you, Nina.
It was a direct one. I got you.
Yeah,
I want to listen to it too.
Everybody.
Nina and Shanna show. Okay, so one of the things that was important to me was to sort of give a model, right? And I use my own children, honestly. I have a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 21-year-old. And I started like dabbling with them. So I have these little, you know, in-home, you know, pools of participants, right? So I started by asking them questions. How you want to be treated? How would it look like for you? What, you know, and they sort of helped me form a model, right? And the model was, okay, I give you some examples of how I would do it. However, as you're sort of looking at this and sort of developing ideas around anti-racism liberation and you know, what does it look like to be an ally or co-conspirator, or whatever word you want to fill in, because I'm not big on words, right? Meaning that all I care about is action. Does the action mean the same thing? And so I started offering some models. And then step by step, I started giving more and more to the youth. Hey, does this feel comfortable to you to do it? I'm here to help you and support you. I'll be your right arm. If you need me, just nudge me and I'll come right in. But I really would love to see if you're comfortable to step into your greatness, because you got this, you're amazing, and you know how to do it. And I really need you to teach me. I really need you to show me. And so the more and more that I sort of gave them the responsibility and asked them what their comfort was, the more that they stood up, the more that they started teaching me. And so, you know, at MOCHA, we have this bi-directional sort of belief that as we sort of share things with you, the expectation is that we are going to learn something in return, that it's not a one-way path to learning. Learning must be bi-directional. So that's how I operate. So that's one way. The other piece was, I kept telling them and affirming to them that you're producers, that we need you to produce, that we need you. Like, you are so valuable, you're so important, and that the elders need you to lead because you're all leaders. And they all stood up in different ways. They all began sort of saying, oh, I'm a leader? Absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. So I have this whole thing of, if the adults just move the heck out the way, the youth can do what they're supposed to do, right? So models are what they are, right? They're to be used or not. And so just, you know, sort of allowing them to say, okay, I'm going to use this piece and throw this other piece away. That's what we wanted them to do. So that's how we sort of lead. We even, oh my God, and there's not that many minutes left. 30 more seconds. Okay. The other way that we allowed our youth to lead is that we have summer camps at MOCHA. And so we said, okay, here's how you do a curriculum, and this is how you do lesson planning. We'd love to see you do a lesson plan. And they made it their own. And so those are examples of how you sort of affirm that young people are leaders. They have the capacity and the ability, and it's already in there. And if we give them these little tools, they will turn some things into masterpieces and make adults look not as bright, right? Because the young people are so amazing and they're brilliant. And it's bi-directional. As we teach them, they teach us. And that, I think that if we lead with that formula, our youth can do what they're supposed to do if we just get the heck out the way.
Agree. Anyone else?
I'll share it very quickly. One of the, I wear several hats, literally and figuratively. You see me around, probably see multiple fedoras. So among the roles that I play, I'm also a teacher this semester. Was not expecting that when I started 2020, but I wasn't expecting many things when I started 2020. But was a teacher. I'm a teacher through the dual enrollment program for Peralta Community College with Oakland High School, and doing the virtual engagement is so different, right? So how do we create these authentic spaces for building relationships that meets young people where they're at, not only when we can't do it literally and physically, even when distance, how can we do that culturally, generationally, where we are in a space where, like we're in their space, right? So how can we share that in a way that builds that relationship in a place where they feel that support to build a relationship in that way? And to tie that back to the other hat that I wear, usually most of the time, I got you, is as a cultural strategist, building these immersive storytelling experiences for young people through summer camps. I actually just launched, in partnership with the Movement Strategy Center fellowship program, a young Black climate leaders program that has 5 young people from across the country, including one here in Oakland, who are going to be it's almost like the training for the trainers, because they're actually going to lead the cohort of 20 who are going to be built into the program by design of their leadership, by design of their program, by design of how they define what is going to be the onboarding, orientation, and scaffolding process. But what was most important in that moment, and I think in many moments, if we are intentional about it, is how do we create the space for new stories and storytellers to emerge? And to emerge in a way that allows those storytellers, particularly those whose stories have been silenced or has been written out of the future, right? To center their voices, their presence, their power in the stories of the future, right? And so what that looks like for me is allowing BIPOC dreamers to share their dreams, free their dreams, and allow that to be the horizon point, the North Star by which we're measuring, are we being true to the dreams of these young people who say that this is the Oakland that they want to see. This is the path that it takes to get there. This is what it means to be Oakland that is a city of belonging, right? And when we have these frames that are thrown out there, like Oakland is a city of belonging, or Oakland believes in equity, who defined that term? Who uses that term? How is that actually evaluated? Because when I go into those rooms, because I'm in a place of privilege to be invited into those rooms, sometimes it looks like a set of folks that don't even live in Oakland. I could tell several different stories about quote unquote design charrettes that are designed for communities in Oakland. And somebody asked the question, how many of you lived in Oakland for the last 10 years? How many lived here 5 years? How many of you don't live here? Well, why are y'all here? Right? So to speak similarly to the stories of the future, who's going to be there carrying the world in not just for the future, but dreaming of the future, what that future can look like, so we can be living abundantly in that future. We need to have an abundant future and abundant storytellers to tell of that future. So if they are not part of that story, they are not part of, we're leaving somebody out. and we're leaving somebody behind. I think that's often happened when we've designed spaces, even when we say it's a youth space, right? That if it's not being youth-led, I work with some young people that said, no, Calvin, youth-dominated. I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, youth-dominated. My bad, let me slow my roll. But often starting from that place where young people set the tone, set the values, set agenda, and we show up in a way that supports that move, and be okay with creating the space for failing forward. Like, not everything's going to work. Not everything's going to pop off the way that we think it is on the first, second, third round. But if we do that within the circles of support, we can prototype and experiment and fail forward the way that communities get to, right? So why not us? Why not do that for young people, and especially in doing so in a place where cultural translators of the future, like, that has to take some experimentation, because we are envisioning, especially when I think about that racial justice and anti-racism component, we're requiring ourselves to speculate about a world that has not existed for us yet.
And I just want to point, because me and Nina had a conversation this week. I think often as teaching artists, as organizations, we often see young people not doing things the way we would do it as failure. And it's just a different way of doing it. It's just, them figuring out how they're going to continue to move forward. And we have to allow that space for that to happen. Like, and what I think is so rich about the time that we are currently in is that we're all, like, kind of failing forward right now, right? Like, we don't know, like, everything is crazy. So if we are allowing ourselves the grace to, like, move through this time in at whatever pace, at whatever, level that, we can do at this time, when we're not in this time, how do we also allow our young people to continue to do the same?
I'm looking at this chat, and it sounds like we all kind of know the same people from Afrofuturism. Sorry, I had to just throw that out there. Mocha has been talking about Afrofuturism for a while now, and now we're about to do a community futures school. But anyhow, I want to go back to what you said about I call them getting gray hairs, right? There's something beautiful and magnificent about getting scars and about getting gray hairs, right? And so, and who was there judging us when we were making our quote unquote mistakes? Sometimes mistakes, I think about, like, abstract art. Oh my God, right? Like, all of the imperfections of that makes this beautiful, amazing piece of artwork. So who are we to judge and say that these are mistakes? They are sort of a formula to creating a more liberated world. And our youth, too often we give them projects and we say, oh, go do it. But we haven't included them nowhere in the design, even with the topics, even with what is being discussed. So it's really not fair if somebody hands you a project and say, okay, go perfect that project right there. That's not fair. It's not. And so I think that we need to lead with a lens that brings them into those discussions early enough so they can get those concepts, right? So they can understand, okay, what is the purpose of what are we trying to do? Because it's just not fair to bring them in the 5th and 6th stage and then expect them to implement something that they were never a part of. That's not fair. And it's not fair to call it a mistake when you never included them in the beginning. That's just, that's my piece of it all. So there are no mistakes if you hand somebody a project and say, okay, go put it together. I mean, just look at how movies are created. Actors don't get it to, like, the 5th or 6th take, sometimes the 10th take. Come on. So I don't know. I have a very interesting perspective about how we engage with youth, and it's not a very dominating perspective. It's how do we make this mutually beneficial for everybody that's involved? And I don't see those things as mistakes. I see those as gray hairs forming, scars, and the beauty of those scars.
No, I mean, I want to just ask you, like, on this topic, how, yeah, like, how do you want to be, as a young person, how do you want to be engaged with, I know you also work with younger youth. How do you engage with folks younger than you?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll speak first as a youth in my interaction with adults. I think, both Nina and Calvin touched on these really wonderful points in that sometimes empowering youth is really just as simple as listening to them and acknowledging their worth and acknowledging the value in their ideas, and their independence and their creative agency, and just seeing them and letting them own that, and own their own value. And I really loved what Calvin was saying about creating or empowering storytellers, the storytellers of the future. And I feel that one of the most integral aspects of doing that successfully is also, and they were both touching on this too, is creating space for vulnerability and empowering youth in their vulnerability. And, telling youth that being a leader doesn't mean that you don't have your own life and your own challenges. That's not what being a leader looks like. And to be vulnerable in those challenges is not to be weak. I think it's easy to have romanticized ideas of what it means to be a leader as a youth, because when you learn about leaders, in your history classes, you only see them in their public eye. You only see all their greatness. You don't really see them as humans outside of that. So telling the youth leaders, you get to be human too. And I also believe that what really marks empowerment, like successful empowerment and successful teaching, is engaging with your youth, and to the point where they are so empowered that they are then able to examine the methods which they were taught. Like, how did you teach this to me? Let me examine that and create my own ideas about what it means to teach, what it means to be a leader. So like examining that pedagogy which they were subject to, and really interacting with it in a genuine way and create their own ideas about it. I think if you get to that point, that's really a marker of true empowerment. And I suppose, I try to carry that forward in my engagement with people who are younger than me. And remember, I try to remember how I felt when I was at that point. A classmate of mine uses the term radical empathy, and I love that term so much, and I feel like that's what I try to carry with me in all my positions of leadership and in all my interactions with folks who are younger than me.
I just like so many snaps for Noemi. I just want to point out that this is the second year that we've had a summer intern, and I'm just continually blown away. I think we have also amazing young people here at Destiny who have come up through Destiny, and I just also have loved having folks who are not coming up through the Destiny community, but are able to like look at what we're doing here and give us like such thoughtful and amazing feedback. So just again, just so many snaps for Noemi, and like, yes, that's the bi-directional learning, like right there in that moment. Indi, I just wanted to also ask you, like, not just engaging with young people, because you engage a lot with the people who teach the young people, and I know you do also a lot of work around the creative youth development framework, like at a kind of local and national level. What do you think about how the shift that is happening right now with everything going on, and how teaching artists and educators are engaging with young people?
Well, I feel like just like Noemi, like you said, that kind of interrogating the way that you're taught and being able, as somebody, like you're already in a place where you're noticing like, oh, I can make choices about the way that I'm seeing adults in my life like hold leadership. And then I like, it sounds like you're being really thoughtful about the way that you're mentoring other people, often folks who are younger than you. And I think that that kind of reflection on the sort of values behind the practice and the purpose of what we teach and how we teach is super critical. And it's at Destiny where I feel like I first became aware of that piece. And in particular, artists who worked with Destiny, Che Ware, they really helped for me make a connection around Afro-Indigenous liberatory practices and the role of circle and the role that, like, even on a Facebook Live, you know, Shanna, you're holding down a meditation and, you know, and the fact that you're kind of noticing the process. And if, you know, there was a space for everybody to have a conversation, I'm sure we all would. We'd be in small groups, like doing a check-in and kind of sharing about each other, because the value of relationships in learning is so key, and it needs to be woven into the practice. And I know, Nina, with your porch talks at MOCHA, you've weaved that practice. So I just want to even name that. Basically, I feel like I'm working with educators and adults to help unlearn the white supremacy culture that everybody is indoctrinated in globally and specifically in this country, so that we can shift to a more relationship-focused practice, to a practice where the outcome is liberation and belonging, to use that word, Calvin, from the City of Oakland's cultural plan. But we really need to shift towards those connections. And I think, you know, speaking to earlier, Archie, what you and Nina were both talking about with systems of power within nonprofits, really engaging and challenging the funders who perpetuate this dynamic over and over again. And it's a dynamic where nonprofits are made to feel insecure about what we are producing, and that we have to codify it or qualify it in a certain way in order to get funding. And that cycle is of dominance, so to speak, is perpetuated with adults and young people. When adults just look at when adults are holding the conditions and the access to resources, and young people are made to fit into what adults deem as the necessary process to show or prove who they are and what they're capable of. So it's a really important thing that needs to go all the way up through the system. And that's something that I get excited about collectively working, because nobody by themselves is going to do it alone, but together we can, you know, be able to examine on all these levels. So we need everybody involved to kind of be engaged in that way, and at the very least just be reflective, like when we walk into a space. You know, I mean, again, to your point about leadership, how are we holding space collectively as leaders, and how are we challenging that idea of like leadership as like my way, rather than leadership as holding space for everybody's way, and finding that common piece moving forward. Thanks.
I think that's
kisses.
I was there's some young people who are here at Destiny that I obviously am more than 6 feet away from. But
can I just jump? I was going to say, I think, you know, what you said, Indi, and, Nina, what you talked about earlier around, it's, you know, the power of voice and who is centered in the conversation. I think that's also very applicable to teaching artists, because when people are coming to an organization and they need work and are being told, okay, this is the curriculum and this is how you do it, it's very different from come sit at the table and design that with us. And your opinion, your pushback, that it's all valued as we are doing this work together. And I think it's that same, you know, we're trying to lift up young people and make sure, apologize for the piano lesson in the background. Try 1 second, sweetheart. And, you know, trying to lift up young people and make sure that their voices are you know, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
Their voices and their piano lessons are heard.
And teaching artists as well, so that they are, and it's something we've been really working on at Destiny for the last couple of years as well, and have, you know, just making sure that teaching artists are, and Indi was a huge part of that as well, like that it's teaching artists are right there with administrators, with like all of us collectively trying to change the conversation and make sure that people are equally a part of it.
As we think about, because this is a 3-year plan, right? And seeing as how in 2020, every week is a year. So that means this plan is gonna last about 3 weeks. How are y'all thinking about being accountable to your communities as things shift and change? How are y'all staying connected to your communities, envisioning new ways to be together? What are some things that your organizations or your programming is looking at?
This is a question I was sitting with very literally, even as I was transitioning into parenthood. And you know, I know he's not on the screen, but I see his name. Mike Lee was one of my go-to people to ask about what is it like to be in this work and also be a father, right? I was asking other parents who are doing this, and part of the reason why was because I was just see this kind of, I'll call it grind culture. Like if I'm not doing something, then I'm not doing anything, right? And giving myself the permission to pause, because I needed to be present for the one who needed me to be present the most, right? And so that question has now resurfaced in multiple ways in every relationship I'm in, when the requirement was we must pause from the way that we are living our lives. I would even assert that we need to stop some of the ways that we are showing up in order to rebalance the way we're in a relationship. But that's really what the question, right? How do I renegotiate what balance looks like and means for me in the relationships I need to be present? And how can I build that presence with intention, right? So there's times where it is the scheduled Zoom calls with friends or the scheduled game nights, right? It's unplugging so that I can chase somebody around the house as they learn how to walk, right? I promise I'm not just using you as a prop. But when we're looking at what are the ways to build authentic, real relationships, especially when, you know, you asked the question about the next 3 years, what is going to be that rhythm of returning to this question of who are we accountable to? Who do we need to be present with? How do we make sure that we are in that community of accountability with integrity as we take the necessary pauses instead of going back into the grind to make sure we're hitting deliverables, hitting the measures, hitting the metrics, but actually in that reflection. And then, of course, who is holding that reflection and whose stories are being told within that reflection. So all of that, just to say, I'm figuring it out as best as I can. I look towards, you know, not saying this because I'm a teacher, I'm with other teaching folks, but I'm looking to teachers, I'm looking to students, I'm looking to people who are asking that same question of these deep questions of holding breadth and depth of relationship for a purpose towards building community in a time where community also is grappling with what does it mean to be community. So I'll stop there, but that's how I'm approaching it.
That's awesome. I like how your hype man in the back was pumping you up. That was pretty awesome. I was like, yeah, they got something going on over there. That was awesome. I think that we have been, the way that we've been sort of connecting with the community is trying to figure out what the needs are. And some of it's been asking, what are the needs, right? So the first way we responded back in March was to provide these art kits with step-by-step guides for students and children. And we were giving them out, like we were, you know, raising money to give them out, ask funders, hey, we want to give them out to give babies something to do. The next step that we sort of went into is how do we use art as a vehicle, right? Meaning, how do we use art to talk about whatever is on the minds of children? So in the past, we've used art and poetry. We've done all kinds of different things. And so I think that's really where we are. That's where we're sitting with. How do we use art as a way to do ... So, you know, everybody wants to do anti-racism. I think it's great. I think we all should do it, right? We should tackle it inside and out. And we should use art as a vehicle to do those things. another way that we recently have decided to do to help the community is that I kept hearing parents at the school that my children go to talk about these learning pods. One part of me was angry and another part was frustrated as a parent, right, with a 7- and 9-year-old at home, 2nd grader and 4th grader. And I was getting upset because I was like, what about those parents that can't afford to pay for a learning pod, right? And so that's another way that we're responding. We're going to all of our funders and saying, hey, I get that y'all have all these requirements, but can we transition that money to learning pods for our families? And not just learning pods, right? Equitable learning pods. They need food, right? They might need transportation. We need y'all to consider all those things. And if you can't, I get it. I have to go to another funder. Maybe you're not the funder for me. And I have to be okay with that. And it doesn't mean that I turn away money. I'm not talking about that, not whatsoever. All I'm saying is that I'm going and I'm trying to figure out, and we we as a team are trying to figure out how do we use art as a vehicle to ... And that's really what our focus is. Our babies need a space that they can go to where they're fed, they're healthy, they get some mindfulness, possibly some yoga, they get some physical activity in a COVID-friendly situation, because they too are grappling mentally with being at home, and they need to get out there. They need that socialization. So those are some of the things that we are doing at MOCHA, is trying to figure out how do we respond to today. And I know that's not like forecasting, right? That's not strategic planning and the traditional, white supremacist delusional culture version of it. But it is a way that we need to sort of think about our communities and our babies in general.
Yeah, I think for us, it's having the plan, having the flexibility built into the plan, and knowing that we're always accountable to what we're accountable to our mission, and our mission is to inspire change. And so that means that things change, right? And you have to be flexible. And I know we didn't talk so much about it, but that is part of that's part of the financial part of any of our goals, is like being sustainable so we can be flexible. But I really liked what Indi was saying about also how we have to push our funders at all levels to not be reinforcing these cycles that, everybody keeps talking about new normal, when we've already established that the old normal was not working for people. So how do we, even interrogate what we call normal? Why is normal not holding everybody and holding everybody's way? Why is normal not about the relationship building? Why is normal about deliverables? Why, So I think in looking at all of these, like I said, this is a 3-year plan, but the way this world is going right now, everything feels like a year. So we might, be throwing it all out the window. So yeah, one thing that I think, and I invite folks, if you're not able to join us right now on the live, I know there's a lot going on outside right now, to continue to engage with us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, all those different things. Ask us these questions. We want to figure out how our community is engaged in holding us accountable to what you need. So anyone else want to talk about how they're connecting in this time? All right. I am looking to the chat to see if we have any questions from the Facebook Live, and barring that, I do just want to talk a little bit about what everyone is doing, because everyone has these really, really awesome things going on. And I definitely want to give each of you a moment to talk about ways that you are supporting the community, things that you do. Like, Nina, tell us a little bit more about Porch Talk. Indi, talk about the work that AEABA is doing, talk about movement strategy. I really want folks to know what is happening out there in the community and how they can get involved, access resources, all of those kinds of things. So just want to give everybody a second to plug their stuff. Indi, you want to start?
Sure. I really just at the Arts Education Alliance of the Bay Area, of which I want to remind everybody that Shanna and Nina are both on the board of. So I feel like, especially like when I talk about AEABA, I want you to know who the people are. There's like awesome people behind all of these ideas. And we're mostly just focused on being able to connect across the Bay Area, but really aligning around the same sort of values that you all are putting forward, like a value, and these values align with creative youth development as a national movement in general. And those values are youth leadership, racial equity, and collective action. And I feel like for myself, regardless of, like Nina said, regardless of the words you use, I feel like you see it in action when it's happening. And so it's really about being like, this is what we're doing, y'all. Like, get on the boat, get on the movement, get on the whatever it is. And especially funders and the people who hold institutional power. Like, this is, I see a lot of, white folks, I'm speaking to my fellow white folks out there in the internetverse, that it's really, there's a lot of knowing that there's a change that needs to happen. And so again, stepping back, listening to your colleagues, friends of color, reading and understanding why it may be that we need a new normal, we need to shift the structures as they are, is super important. And that's the work that I feel like Arts Education Alliance of the Bay Area, AEABA, wants to do, which is to name the work and to figure out how to collectively engage people in a way that's aligned with the same process about helping people create their own questions, helping people to find connection, and moving the work forward collectively. And one thing that's coming up on Friday is a healing circle for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, or people of color creatives, as a way, like you mentioned, Jenna, at the top of the hour, there's a lot of things going down, especially this week with the Breonna Taylor verdict around the cops who murdered her. Like, this is a time that is really important also for healing as well as action. And this is all part of the process. And that is an affinity group led by Sheba Aberg, specifically as a space for BIPOC folks to come together to heal as the primary goal. Like, no deliverables, just that outcome of connection. So that's one thing that we're doing. And you can look at artsedalliance.org for more opportunities to convene and connect with other people.
Calvin, you ready, or you need a moment?
This is the rest of the night, so it's all good.
You're muted.
Unmuting myself. Take two. All right. Yeah. So the quick plugs I'll say. One is I'm part of an intergenerational gathering called the Healing Generations Institute. We do hold monthly healing circles. Actually, our next one is tomorrow evening from 5 to 7. We have it scheduled. A place where we can be in reflection, especially for folks who see themselves as circle keepers. This is a circle for the circle keepers, right? Other thing that I want to mention on the arts front, as a cultural strategist and creative and storyteller, one of my passion projects from this summer was actually creating an Afrofuturist anthology with 10 other Black creatives called Memories of Abolition Day. It's available. It's a story world that imagines 100 years of 100 years liberated from prisons, policing, and surveillance states. and what are the stories of family, community, and safety and freedom that emerge from that. That's available at thebigwe.com/abolition day. Again, that's thebigwe.com/abolition day. And lastly, one other thing to just quick plug around Critical Resistance is celebrating their anniversary and doing a fundraiser next week, or through next week, called Imagine Freedom. And I'll be hosting a conversation with some of the artists and storytellers from Abolition Day Anthology next Friday. So not this Friday, but the Friday after next. Also on Facebook land, so we'll do a Facebook Live. I'll send out the info. And until then, my biggest next step is getting somebody fed.
Great. Nina?
I love it. Feeding is important, necessary. So one of the things that we are doing is through the library. We are giving away art kits. It's free to the public. I believe it's the library in Chinatown, Cesar Chavez, the main library. We're working on getting a kids zone at the Acoma Market, which is held every Sunday, long as the weather permits, on 73rd and Foothill. It's part of the Black Cultural Zone. And so we will be there this Sunday giving out books and art kits and offering some arts programming there. And then we are, let's see, what's the other thing? The Porch Talk is happening on October 10th. It's once a month. It is youth dominated, proud to say that. We expect them to produce their own full-on Porch Talk on the November Porch Talk. I think that's the 7th, but you can go to mocha.org/Porch Talk. It's also on our front page as well. And then we are implementing our anti-racism curriculum using art as a vehicle into those discussions with K-8. And then what's the last thing? I know there's something else. I can't remember. Anyhow, equitable pods. Can't wait. MLK. Yes. Super excited. Can't wait for that to go down. We're going to be hosting 12 students and expect to go to as many as 48 in our space. So super, super excited about that.
And Noemi, I know you're going into senior year, or you're in senior year because the school has started. What do you have going on? Anything you want to plug or talk about?
Yeah, well, the projects that I'm working on are very much in service to my smaller insular community of my school. I'm currently a senior at the College Preparatory School in Oakland, and private institutions are one of the more inherently racist ones out there. So, and even as a private institution in Oakland, which, prides itself in being quite liberal, it has a lot of work to do. So currently I'm spearheading a project to develop a peer support system on campus for students to lean on the support of other peer mentors in instances of discrimination in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And I'm also working on an initiative to really critically examine our curriculum at school, and through an E&I lens and through an anti-racist framework to hopefully make some real changes to the way that things are taught and the things that are taught to us. So that's not much to plug because it's happening in my community, but yeah, that's what's going on for me.
That was a lot to plug. That was a whole mouthful and 3 jobs. Yes.
Like, you're dope and you do dope work. So we appreciate you. Just so everyone knows what's going on here at Destiny, registration is open for classes, and classes start on October 5th. They will be virtual for the time being. We are looking into how we can meet in person. We are trying to make sure that we do that in a way that is safe for our young people as well as for our teaching artists. So, you know, we're just continuing to move forward as guidelines change, and they're changing all the time, seeing what we can do. We have a lot of things in the works, but we want you to register. Still, as always, classes are sliding scale. No one is turned away for lack of funds. Please join us. We have also added, as you know, some special programming. One of them is a movement and wellness class for adults, and those will meet on Tuesdays from 6 to 7. We have our anti-racism task force. If you are interested in applying to be a part of that, applications are due October 1st. We also have an info session happening this Saturday at 10 a.m. So if you have any questions about what that looks like, please come join us, ask your questions. And Life is Living Festival, Oakland's amazing Life is Living Festival is going online. And Destiny will be participating in the festival virtually on October 10th. Destiny will have a block from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., I believe. And you can join us for some like live and pre-recorded content on that day. And we hope to see you there. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for creating connections. Oh, this is the most important thing. Moving forward with these conversations, we would like our young people to let us know what they want to talk about. So we have also a call out to young people who are interested in picking topics, helping us facilitate these conversations, or again, I'm happy to let you facilitate it. I'm happy to, with my support, let you take the reins. So also check out our social media, Instagram, Facebook, for more information about how you can get involved with that. The next talk that we have will be October 21st, and we are looking for young people to let us know what they want to be talking about. I just want to remind people that that's also right before a certain election, so. Just saying. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to everybody out there in Facebook land. And hopefully we will, you know, move forward and continue to create the world that we want to see. Thank you.